Hi, I'm Professor Lynn Ritchey, and in this video, we will be exploring the concepts of ethnocentrism and cultural relativity. As we begin to explore cultural patterns, it will become clear that we have some biases in what we think is appropriate and inappropriate behavior. When we make such judgments based on our cultural patterns, we are exhibiting ethnocentrism. According to William Sumner, ethnocentrism is when our own group is the center of everything, and all others are scaled and rated with reference to it. It is our assumption that our cultural patterns are correct and superior to others. Ethnocentrism exists in all societies and cultures. It is a cultural universal. Ethnocentrism helps provide a society or group with social order. When most people are in agreement with the rule book or the cultural patterns, people will conform to the cultural patterns, bringing social order and less conflict among community members. Conformity maintains the current cultural patterns or traditions, with people who question the traditions or norms being considered deviant. Ethnocentrism can also build group cohesion and solidarity. We can see this in operation with patriotism and cheering for the home team at the Olympics. It provides citizens with a sense of belonging. However, ethnocentric thinking has a number of disadvantages. When we start an interaction with a judgment, ethnocentrism, it closes us off to new experiences and alternative ways of achieving our goals. If we take a look at the variation in food choices, we can see our ethnocentric views of what we think is better. Clearly, our food choices are dependent on our environment and what is available. Today in the United States, we are fortunate to have the technology to access a variety of foods from around the world. However, one food category rejected by the majority of the US and eaten by the majority of the world's citizens is insects. The US Food and Drug Administration recognizes the impossibility of removing all impurities from our processed food, and they offer a food defect levels handbook that lists the allowable amounts of insect pieces, rodent hairs, mold, and other impurities for each food. How willing are you to try new foods? How likely would you be to incorporate edible grade insects into your diet? Food rituals play a very important role in creating group cohesion and bonding for every culture. When we reject food traditions, we are rejecting new experiences and cultures. When we exhibit ethnocentrism, we are demonstrating the power of our cultural patterns on our behavior. What foods disgust you, and why does it disgust you? Try the food disgust test. Take a pause here. What were your results, and what did you discover about your level of food disgust? My results showed that I have low food disgust with a percentage of 31.5%. Based on the chart for the 8 trigger areas, it was clear that I have the most disgust for seafood. This may hamper my experiences in cultures with seafood-based diets. I can trace this aversion to being socialized in the Midwest of the United States. We had limited access to seafood. Our fresh seafood consisted of lake perch and walleye. Our diets consisted of meat and potatoes with a few other vegetables like corn, peas, green beans, and tomatoes. I can recall very averse reactions to fishy situations. For example, I was invited to a Chinese family dinner. One of the dishes had a very strong fish flavor, and I just hoped that my stomach wouldn't betray me. The same occurred when I received a very fishy tuna fish sandwich. I couldn't eat it but my Scottish friends found it delicious. A second disadvantage of ethnocentrism is the possibility of cultural imperialism. Cultural imperialism occurs when one culture imposes their cultural patterns on another. This can be seen when countries are colonized by others, like the Native American nations, India, and Africa. Here, the dominant culture imposes their norms and values on the less dominant culture. We can see this on a smaller scale with missionary work in developing countries. Barbara Kingsolver's book, The Poisonwood Bible, follows a family of missionaries and chronicles the devastating effect of ignoring cultural traditions in agricultural practices. Even business organizations have introduced programs that have had devastating impacts on native cultures. In the 1970s, Nestle started to market baby formula to mothers in developing countries like South America, South Asia, and Africa, with devastating effect. Convinced of the superiority of the formula over breast milk and the cost, mothers added more than the recommended amount of water, reducing the nutritional value of the formula. Additionally, the water was often contaminated and they lacked the resources for proper sterilization of the water and bottles. These factors increased malnutrition, weakened immune systems, and increased infant mortality. It is important for us to understand the consequences of not recognizing the cultural patterns of others. When we are ethnocentric, it cuts off opportunities for cultural exchanges that are mutually beneficial. Finally, although ethnocentrism can reduce conflict in a society or community by creating group cohesion, it can also encourage intergroup hatred and violence. When we look at extremist groups in any society, we can see ethnocentrism at its worst. When beliefs are challenged, it can create strong emotional responses. After 9/11 in the United States, we became focused on international terrorist groups, specifically Islamist. In 2020, the Homeland Security Report lists far-right domestic extremist groups as more of a threat to the USA than Islamist extremist groups. The Southern Poverty Law Center has tracked 1,600 hate groups in the United States. The type of hate groups tracked are anti-immigrant, anti-governmental militia, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Muslim, black separatist, Christian identity, Holocaust denial, the KKK, male supremacy, neo-Confederate, neo-Nazi, and so on. Their website offers a detailed listing of domestic terrorist activity since the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. It also offers details about the cultural ideology promoted by the groups. It can be hard not to be ethnocentric. We might think we understand a particular behavior, but our perspective is at best a very limited one. Cultural relativism is a perspective that recognizes societal values and cultural ideologies guide and motivate our behaviors. Cultural relativists view all social traditions and customs as important and relevant to the lives of individuals. It emphasizes the need for tolerance even though the cultural practices may differ from our own. When we make a judgment about a cultural behavior, we need to evaluate it from the perspective of those who practice the behavior. If we are using a scientific ideology to judge a traditional custom with a religious ideology, we are being ethnocentric. Female circumcision is a very hard ritual for us to understand. Our emotional response to the practice demonstrates how strong our attitudes are on the matter. Our statuses, such as being a nurse or a citizen of the USA, can influence our perspective on how we view particular rituals. There is no medical benefit to female circumcision. However, when female circumcision is practiced, followers justify the practice with religious or traditional perspectives. One essential intercultural skill is the ability to take the perspective of the other, walking a mile in another person's shoes. Professor Sam Richards provides a brief TED Talk on the importance of empathy in the study of sociology, and he asks his audience to put themselves in the shoes of another culture. Take some time to watch his radical experiment in empathy. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.